So, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about something a little bit controversial. Nuclear power in Ireland. Would it mean the explosion of the whole country, or would it mean electricity for everybody? Let's go and find out. All right, I'm here with Sarah, who's an energy specialist. She's from an organisation called 18 for Zero, who are looking at the feasibility of nuclear energy in Ireland. Sarah, thanks for coming and chatting to us.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. And so in the background here, I see a couple of towers and some stuff going on here. This is some sort of a power plant?
Yes, this is a gas plant. It's called Poolbeg.
Okay, so this isn't a nuclear power plant?
No, we don't have those in Ireland.
Okay, we don't have them in Ireland. And, well, I'm hearing a lot of people talking about nuclear power as like an option for Ireland, but before we can decide it as an option, I think we kind of need to know what it is. Like, how do we get electricity from nuclear power?
So, nuclear electricity is energy that you get from the atom.
We've talked about atoms.
So, when you have an atom that breaks apart, it emits heat, so energy. It also emits another little particle called a neutron, which hits into other atoms and breaks them apart, which emit more neutrons and makes more heat. With all that heat, you can boil water to generate steam and turn a turbine.
So it's just a way of boiling water to generate steam to turn a turbine, just like in normal power plants?
Yeah, it's like a big kettle.
Okay, a big kettle. Right, so you say that these atoms, we just bounce atoms off each other and break them apart or something, but if everything is made of atoms, then why do they always use these like super scary green glowy materials like uranium and all that sort of stuff to make nuclear power?
Well, they're not really scary materials, they're natural. Okay. They're just particularly big atoms. So if you want the atom to break apart and get the energy from it, you need a big heavy one, and uranium is one of the ones that you can use.
Okay, right, so they have to be big and heavy in order to break apart. Right, well, that's very interesting. So we can just break them apart to make heat, but I hear a lot of people thinking that there's downsides or that there's problems. Is it not something that, like, you know, they're going to explode and like kill us all, or there's going to be all sorts of nuclear radiation that's spewing all over the bay here in front of us, or like, is that not what's going to happen?
No, absolutely not. So nuclear power is 10% of electricity around the world, and in some countries it's even higher. In France, it's 70%, and it's perfectly safe, and we've been using it for decades.
Okay, very interesting. So I'm hearing like loads more about nuclear at the minute, and if it's been around for so long, why are we talking about it now?
Well, now we know about the dangers of climate change, and because we burn a lot of fossil fuels for our electricity at the moment, we want to try to replace those because they emit a lot of carbon, and nuclear is one option to replace them.
Right. So wait, are you saying that nuclear doesn't emit carbon? Surely if we're burning uranium instead of burning, coal, it emits carbon too.
No, it doesn't emit any. So fossil fuels work by burning them and then using the heat from that to to generate steam to turn a turbine.
Okay.
Uranium doesn't actually burn anything. Because the particles are splitting apart, you don't burn anything and it doesn't emit any carbon.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that sounds really good. But hold on, I have definitely heard about nuclear waste. Surely we're going to have loads and loads of nuclear waste pouring all over the place, and that's going to be a disaster. How are we going to fix that?
Well, we've been safely managing nuclear waste for decades, including in Ireland, where we have nuclear waste from medical facilities and industry. But in countries with nuclear power, they have different types of nuclear waste as well that they do safely manage. And there's a lot of international police making sure that they manage it safely.
All right, okay, but then what about Chernobyl? Is there not going to be an explosion? If there was an explosion in a power plant in Ireland, surely we couldn't live here anymore and it would be a disaster.
No, that's not true. Okay. So with Chernobyl, which was a plant in Ukraine in the 1980s, it was a very old plant that doesn't exist anymore. Okay. The plants that exist now can't explode. And the ones that we're thinking of maybe having for Ireland wouldn't be able to explode.
Okay, well, this all sounds very interesting, but haven't we figured out solar and wind? Can we not just use solar and wind to supply all our energy needs?
Well, we're going to build a lot of solar and wind, but there's always going to be days where it's not sunny and there's always going to be days where it's not windy. So we need something to back it up. And at the moment, we use fossil fuels to back it up, which isn't really great for the environment. So it's worth looking into other options.
Okay, well, could we not just use giant batteries?
Maybe. It's not clear that we can. And even if we could, they would cover a lot of land and be very expensive. We could look into it, but I wouldn't bank on it.
Okay, right. So we can't just use solar and we can't just use wind. But I've heard that there's a big long wire going to go the whole way to France and it's going to bring loads of electricity to us and then we won't need to use nuclear at all.
Well, when that wire connects us to France, who are 70% powered by nuclear, we'll be buying nuclear power from them.
Okay.
And we already buy nuclear power from the UK through another big wire.
Okay.
But these wires aren't that big. They can't supply all of our electricity, and we're always going to need to generate our own electricity too.
Okay, so we kind of need to be in charge of our own electricity because otherwise we're just buying it off other people and we don't know what will happen and we can't even get it all over here anyway. Okay, right. Well, but one thing that I'm thinking about is I've heard that they're saying now that nuclear can be sustainable because it's not emitting carbon, but like it's not renewable. Aren't we going to just run out of nuclear material? Isn't that going to be a problem?
No, not as much of a problem as running out of fossil fuels, maybe. Nuclear power is very energy dense. So uranium, a pellet the size of a gummy bear, emits as much energy as a ton of coal.
A ton of coal and a gummy bear-sized piece of uranium.
Which also makes it really easy to store. So it makes it hard to run out, especially in the short term. But in over 100 years, say we run out of the type of uranium we use at the moment and we're not recycling it as much as we could, there are other fuels we could use besides uranium, such as thorium. And there's other type of reactors that don't use as much.
Okay, so people seem to be planning it and figuring it out. Okay, well this all sounds very interesting, but so isn't there something going on now though inside the parliament? Is there arguments with different countries? Some EU countries seem to think that like nuclear is super bad, some of them think it's super good. How is that going to be solved? Is the EU going to tell us if it's good or bad for us to have nuclear?
So the EU is passing new definition for what sustainability is for when you're building new power plants. And it looks like nuclear is going to be included in that because it meets all of their definitions for what sustainable energy is. There's just some political arguments about it, but it's not related to the science.
Okay, so basically from what I can tell, the science says that we can make loads and loads of electricity using nuclear power without emitting the carbon that we get from fossil fuels. There are some issues with having all this nuclear waste, but it seems to be that we can handle that.
Yeah.
And it seems to be that it's a pretty good plan into the future.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've learned loads today, and I think that we should totally look at it as an option. Of course, maybe it's not for us, but I think it's really cool that we look at it as an option. I hope the guys at home enjoyed learning about it, and I'm already looking forward to seeing you again in the future, and maybe we'll be in a nuclear power plant.
Maybe.
Thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah.